Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel and my blog, depending on where you're watching it. So for today's card, I started with this very large heart die from Simon Says Stamp. This is part of the Nested Hearts wafer die. And I have some Simon Says Stamp masking paper here. These sheets come in 8.5 by 11 sheets. So I cut down a large piece. It's a bit bigger than an A2 size card. It's about roughly 4.5 by close to 6 inches because I want to die cut the heart from the masking paper. So I run that through my die cut machine, and the actual heart shape I'm just going to save with the masking paper to either use, or I'll die cut something smaller from it later, whatever. I'll save that. All I want is the outside piece here of the masking paper. And I purposely chose this size heart because it just fits on an A2 sized card. So I have my card base, which is Simon's 120 pound white cardstock. And I'm carefully placing the mask here onto my card front. It takes a bit of fiddling because the mask itself is fairly flimsy because I die cut such a huge image from it. But all I care about is just making sure that that heart itself, you know, the shape of the heart, the other parts of the mask are irrelevant. I just want to make sure I have that heart masked off on the front of my card base. And then once I've got that, I'm going to sponge on Distress inks. I was going to use oxides. I have so many inks. I was like, I don't know which one to use. But then I was like, I haven't used Distress inks in a while. And I know how vibrant they are. I know exactly how they'll, go together. So that would be perfect. So I use those with just my Ranger mini blending brushes, or like the sponges that I always keep in the bottom of my little Distress ink cubes because they fit perfectly. And I'm also using these blending sponges this time just because I want to lay down just a heavy amount of ink. I'm not doing any, fading of the blending or anything like that. I just want the color on because I want to fill this entire heart area with these inks. I want the color to be solid. I don't need a perfect blend. You could still get it with these sponges, no problem. I've done that for years. But with this, I just want the color on because when I apply the Glimmer paste after this, it's gonna blend it all together as well. So this is really, really simple, really, really easy. My only concern was making sure I didn't get any ink on my fingers and then accidentally somehow get it on the card because I want to keep the rest of the card base white. So I just get all of my Distress inks on here, and I purposely used a red, orange, and yellow. So Candied Apple, Mustard Seed, Carved Pumpkin, because that's this week's Color Throwdown Challenge. So I've got the colors on there. I'm happy with how it turned out. So now I'm using my Nuvo Moonstone Glimmer Paste, which is just an absolute favorite. And I have my palette knife here, and I'm just carefully scraping this right over that mask, right over these inks. I started on the yellow side because they're Distress inks, they will react a bit, and it'll start to kind of tint the paste. So I don't want to pull the red paste. If I started on the red side, I didn't want to pull it onto the yellow side. So I'm just starting on the yellow side and just kind of as evenly as I can kind of spreading it on. And there's a couple spots where I had little dried chunks, which normally I wouldn't notice if I was doing this over a stencil, etc., because I'm trying to apply, an even bit. So I just kind of remove those and wipe them onto the rest of the stencil just to get them out of there, and then kind of smooth everything out, and I'm good to go. So the little bit that's remaining on my palette knife, I'm going to wipe that off. I'm not putting it back in the jar. Thankfully, I was pretty good at eyeballing how much I needed. But it was tinted. It had the yellow tint from the ink on it, so I wiped that off. I don't want to tint what's remaining in the jar, even though the jar is almost empty. And I mentioned this in another video. I have a backup. This is one of my most used. I love Nuvo's Glimmer Paste. So, wiped off my palette knife, and then I'm removing the stencil or my mask before I let any of this dry because it's easier to remove when it's wet. I'm just trying to be really careful because, I don't want to mess up on the rest of the card base there because it's so nice and white and crisp. But I'm just carefully, and letting the masked hair, there's no way I'd get a reuse out of this. Just because, again, the size of that die cut and the flimsiness of it. So I just carefully remove that so then now it can completely dry. And then now it's got this great big, colorful, sparkly heart on my card front. So to finish the card, I'm using Simon's Big Picture Book Elephant Wafer Die. And I'd already put it together with some washi tape. And I've shown in previous videos how I put these together. And especially this elephant, it's easy. You just basically just die cut it, stick it together, it's done. But I actually pulled the ears back a little bit and then kind of nested them behind the head. I just thought that would kind of look a little cute just to make it just a little bit different. And then I'm going to pop this all up with foam tape. So I moved the ears over and then just added a little bit more washi tape and just to give them that cute little look. So I did that with the elephant. And then for my sentiment, I'm using the CZ Design all caps #1 alphabet die set, and I die cut the word tons. So after I die cut it 3 times from the same heavyweight white cardstock, and I'm going to stack all these letters together with some craft tacky glue, just to give them that dimension and depth. So I got those all stacked together, and my go-to is always 3. If you really want to get things to pop up, you could do 4 layers of heavyweight cardstock. That looks really nice too, but for me, it's just habit. I rarely do more than 3. So went through, stacked all of those letters together. And then to build the rest of my sentiment, I have just a sentiment from the CZ Design tab sentiment set. There was a little sentiment in there that said love you, which was perfect because I wanted the front of my card to say love you tons. So I pulled that one out, and then I also pulled out one of my favorites from the CZ Design Love You Like stamp set that says, and that's a whole lot. So I pulled those out and some scraps of black cardstock, and I used my anti-static powder tool first on the cardstock, and then I'm going to stamp both of these sentiments with some clear embossing ink. So stamp those onto the scraps, and then I'm going to coat both of these with Simon's Detail White embossing powder. So just sprinkle that over top, tap off the excess, and also remove any little like random strays that just decide to kind of stick right around the sentiment there. And then I can melt these with my heat tool, let that heat up for a few seconds, melt the sentiments as always. And then with both of these, I am going to die cut them with the smallest of the Simon Says Stamp Sentiment Labels wafer dies. This set, like this, I've raved about this die set forever. Or well, since it came out. It was like Stamptember, I think, that they released this one. But yeah, I use, especially the smallest one, I use this one all the time. So die cut both of those with that. And then I'm just going to use my little Tim Holtz guillotine trimmer to trim off the ends of both of these sentiments so that I've got everything straight and cut down exactly how I like it. So trim both of those off. And then it's just a matter of adhering everything to my card base. So that glitter paste is completely dry by this point, obviously, because my trimmer is literally sitting right on top of it. It's completely dry. So to adhere the elephant, I use some 3D foam squares because I really like using foam tapes when adhering over like either glitter paper or this glitter paste when it's applied like this is kind of the same idea, the same texture. So I'll pop the elephant up with the foam squares, and then for those die cut letters, I'm actually just using like a ruler would work, any sort of like straight edge. I'm just using my little straight edge from the Misty Creative Corners. And I'll have a link to that. I use these all the time. So I just use that to kind of give me a visual so that I could adhere these letters rather straight. So I just kind of started with one of the middle letters, and I'm using that craft tacky glue again, which adheres really well over glitter paste. It just takes a little bit longer for it to, you know, once it starts drying and holding onto the glitter paste. Oh, and forgive me with throughout the video, like this, you know, the sun's kind of shining and making it look a little bit odd, but it is we hit minus 53 yesterday when I was filming this, minus 53 Celsius, which is around minus 60 Celsius or Fahrenheit roughly. It was cold. It's about that cold today. Not quite. It was minus 48 or 49 today, which usually means it's sunny. I love the sun. It's cold. And for those that always ask, we still do everything here. Our cars still run. We still go outside. My kids go to school. We go to work. It's life. But anyway, the sun was shining. I had the, you know, my blinds open, soaking up what little cold sunlight I could soak up. So adhered everything, and that finished off this card. So as always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post. I'll have a supply list. I'll link to everything I use, so you can check that out below if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.